Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett, and today you've got me, solo episode coming at you once again. Where we're going to cover off on why testing and measuring are the most important tools in your marketing arsenal. One of the things that's like a lot of people would say is like a marketer's crutch or something that marketers kind of tend to lean on heavily is the whole process of testing. So testing process is so important because what you will find is, and as I say, like most people think that marketers use it as a crutch, but the reason why it's so important is because you cannot see what things can be improved unless you test and measure, right? And look, measuring definitely is the first and most important one. If you don't measure things, you should not start testing things, right? Like that has to happen first. Otherwise, there's no point in testing. But if you don't know the outcome that something generates, and I speak to people all the time from all over the world, and I'm like, cool, so what results does this generate? And they don't know. And if they don't know, it makes it very hard to be able to find out what the next steps are and what you should test next. So measuring is the number one thing that you need to do. So as I mentioned, if you run Facebook ads, for example, like we run Facebook ads for people. And of course, if you ever need any help, head over to marketingmogul.com.au. When we look at things, like if we're going to look at running campaigns for someone, I say, cool, how much does it cost you to generate a lead? How much does that cost you to generate a sale? How much does that cost you to generate a phone call? If you don't know those statistics, if you don't know those things, you should not start testing things. You should not be like, oh, I want to split test. I heard someone say that split testing is cool. I really want to do that. That is just a fool's journey, right? Not a hero's journey, a fool's journey. So what you want to do is, number one, is to get all your metrics in place and start to measure things effectively. What I mean by that, so you need to know when you're spending money, how much is it costing you to generate a lead? How much is it costing you to generate a call? How much is it costing you to generate a sale? These are the numbers you need to know before you even dive into the whole world of testing and split testing and all those fun, fancy things that all the marketers will tell you need to do, right? So once you've got your measurements in place, first port of call, that's most important, then you can move on to testing. Now, a lot of people, maybe you're just doing organic strategies or maybe you're, spending in a wide variety. Whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. Then you still need to know your metrics, right? You still need to be able to measure and go, cool, if I get 50 people to my landing page, I get X people to do this, I get Y people to do that. So even if you're like, oh, but I can't measure because maybe you're not running ads at the moment. If you are, like, go back and do the step I just told you. If you aren't, then you still need to be measuring the performance and results at each step. So you go, cool, if I get 100 people to my landing page or 100 people to my website, these are the actions that happen as a byproduct of that. And again, if you're not doing that already, that needs to be your first port of call, right? So number one is get all the measurements in place. And then number two, you can move on to testing, right? That's when you can do all the fun things. But the big problem that most people make is that when it comes to testing, they don't actually test one thing at a time. They're like, oh, cool, I'm going to test these 6 different ads. I'm going to test these different sets of copy. I'm going to make all these changes to my landing page. Then you cannot prove the result, right? Everything that we do in marketing, we want to be as scientific as possible. I understand it's not fully able to be scientific in some aspects, but we want to be as scientific and measurable as possible. So when we're doing our testing, we can only test one thing at a time, right? Because if we go and we start testing a whole myriad of different things, we start changing ads, we start changing copy, we start changing landing pages, once we've made a change, we don't know what the outcome was. We don't know which change worked or which change didn't work, right? So if we're looking at measuring the performance, we need to know which change worked. We need to make, if we change this headline, if we change this image, did it generate a better or worse outcome? So the big mistake that people make is that they go and do all these things at once. They're like, oh, this wasn't working, so I'm going to test all these things. And it's like, hang on. You need to have, and this is what, going back to the direct marketing days, they would have and call their control. So they might have a control letter if they were sending it out. And it's like, great, now we're going to change a headline, or we might change the package that it gets sent in, and we want to try and beat that control. So again, going back to ads, let's just say that you're spending $20 per ad. You're spending $20 per lead. That's your control with your current ad, current funnel. That's your control. $20 is what it costs to generate you a lead. So obviously you go, cool. Now, if I want to beat that, I'm going to make one change right, to try and beat my control. So everything else stays the same, and you might change the image, and you literally label it so you know image change, right? And you see, does that beat it or not? Yes, no, maybe. If it does, now you have a new control, right? If it gets at $16, awesome. Now I know with a different image, my cost comes in at 16. Awesome. Then we move on to the next thing, headline, whatever. And then you optimize as much as you can on your ad perspective. Then you can go and make changes, and you can optimize on your landing pages and things like that. So it's just literally methodical. It's literally scientific. It's literally focusing on one key metric at a time. Because like I said, if you change everything all at once, who knows? You can't actually ascertain what the outcome was. And that's what it frustrates with me when a lot of people are like, oh, I want to split test, I want to do this, and this, that, and that. And it's like, well, hang on. Number one, do we have the base measurements in place? Number two, what are we testing and why? Like, we can't just chuck all these things at a wall and see what sticks. But once we can ascertain and go, cool, we've got our base, we've got our main understanding of what performs and what doesn't, then we can move on to the next thing. Then we can change, and then we can test. But the worst thing you could literally do is start testing things for the sake of testing things because someone told you to test, or you listen to someone else's podcast, which you shouldn't do. Only listen to the Kim Barrett show. It's the best. But if you go and do that because someone said split test, and it's like, oh, cool. But now, like, why am I split testing, and what am I split testing for? Right? Which is always the big issue. So to sum up what I've shared today, and I said, I highly recommend that all of you guys do this. Get your measurements in place. If you need anything, wherever you are listening to this, drop a comment, shoot us a message if we can help. But find out what your base measurements are, measure and put those in place, get all of that, then start testing and think about images, headlines, main copy, call to action, all that sort of stuff comes once you got your base measurements. Then you start testing all those things. You can test it from the ad side or organic if you're doing organic only, and then you can test it across on this side of the landing pages or funnels or messenger, wherever you're sending people for the next step in your process. But you have to do that first, right? You can't just go and start chucking stuff up against the wall and see what sticks. And guys, if you've liked what I've shared today, if that has given you some insights about what to do next, please give me a cheeky subscribe. It's the way that we grow, and apparently it's the way that all the platforms now are like, hey, is Kim's show good? Is by people who subscribe. So please subscribe to the show so you can see these things before and hear them before anyone else. And of course, if we can ever help you, if you need more help with your marketing, head over to marketingmogul.com.au. We've got a bit of a case study and some training and some info there for you to help you out. So if you need anything at all, please feel free to reach out. And like I said, please go over and subscribe wherever you're listening to this, wherever your favorite channel is, so that they know that our podcast is good and we do things good. That's the goal. But guys, until next time, I'm Kim Barrett. Y'all have been awesome. Adios.